Welcome back. It's a good night for a story. We'll keep you company. Thanks for listening and or watching. Now, tonight's tale. Ever find yourself driving, and after a while not sure where you are, how you got here, or if there's even a sign anywhere to tell you? Well, get directions. Don't get lost. Never let yourself get sad. And whatever you do, drive anywhere but Gerdy Road. Gerdy Road. Parenthetically is a big word. It's synonymous with incidentally, which comes from the root incident, that in the Latin means something that occurs in connection with something else, or even is likely to happen. As such, an incident is about to befall the drifter, Ambrose Stevenson. Growing up, Ambrose's mother had told him he was related to Adelaide Stevenson. Whether true or not, this was no doubt to inspire the boy to go out and make something of himself. Hadn't gone anywhere, nor done anything. Loved women, yet failed to attract one. Hated men, and avoided working with them. He knew from one summer spent in the Conservation Corps that in nature, strays like him always got culled. What he didn't know was how and when. He'd hitched a ride at a roadside gas station some 3 hours back, 150 miles. But this trucker swiftly soured on the stench of Ambrose's corduroy jacket and the color of his humor. He therefore found himself adrift amongst the lost, lonely byways of life once more. Nothing amounting to anything behind him, not even headlights, and more of the same on the pitch-black horizon. He ambled along, enjoying Twinkies he'd nabbed from the trucker's glove box while the big galoot was gassing up. They'd been discovered alongside a pack of slim cigars. He'd swiped those too. There was also a Colt .44 Magnum revolver in a padlocked holster, but he didn't risk touching that. What he really was hoping to score were some of those carry-on scotch or wild turkey. But okay, Twinkies and smokes were jackpots by Ambrose standards. It'd be sunup in a few hours, making these the darkest, quietest patches of nightfall on Earth. Curious then, when the road ahead flashed with beams of every hue of red. Ambrose never knew there were so many variations of that one particular color. Must be a terrible traffic accident, he thought to himself. 'Tis an awful fuss. Yes, that must be what 'tis. If he hurried, he might lend a hand. People were always at their kindest during emergencies. He was sure to get an ER blanket and an orange juice, maybe even a bed and a meal if he claimed to be amongst the wounded. Only once he crested a high grade, there was no one around at all. The demon red lights were coming from where the street forked hard into the forest wood. A rave, the man now surmised. He'd stumbled upon many such parties in progress, and with few exceptions, kids were always generous with their beer, anything to keep you from reporting them to the cops, or worse, their parents. Where was the music, though? Ambrose determined that he'd walk to the end of the state to learn about these strange lights, and prodded himself to keep moving over the cement potholes and alligator cracks, averting his eyes and shielding his face with his sleeve. For this reason, he missed a crooked street sign, Gerdy Road. A bestial yowl welcomed him. It wasn't the noise of some mindless mountain cat trying to scare him off. This sound was personal. It was meant for him. No escaping it. Judgment hour. He knew it deep in his bones. How many days had he wished for this moment, prayed for its coming? Now that it was here, the man just hoped it would be fast and without much pain before the inevitable. Howling now grew so wicked it could be felt, screaming at him, accusing him, knocking him to his knees. He looked left and right, up and down. Who was coming? Who? The lights, the road. The lights, the road. The lights, the road. Roy delicately squashed wadded brown packing paper inside a set of Japanese kintsukuroi bowls and vases. These were fineries he and Faren had been able to afford during finer times. His wife entered their bedroom with a Tupperware of spicy ramen noodles she'd just nuked in the microwave. The husband was famished, turning appreciatively before realizing she'd only made the one bowl. "Don't drop those," Faren greeted. "It's kintsugi," Roy reminded. "We bought 'em damaged." She was dressed in blue jeans and high heels. "Going out with Helen?" "When else am I going to see her again?" "After you're done in here, please finish the garage," she said. "Trucks will be here at 8 a.m. sharp. Could really use a hand today," he said. Faren left without another word. Roy heard the tires of her convertible Camaro peeling down the street. The man finished the last of the gold-repaired pottery, clenching his eyelids with a labored sigh. He'd barely survived downsizing the previous year. As soon as his supervisor walked inside his office door last Monday morning, he knew it was time to get the movers on the horn. Roy reopened tired eyes, catching a glimpse of his mug in a bureau dresser mirror. He used his thumb and pointer finger to pose his limp lips into a hanging, clownish smile. Next morning, the McDreweries were eastbound on I-40 heading towards Ambition, Arkansas. Thanks be to God, Ma had left them the family house in her will. Somehow she always knew. Faren had wanted it on the market before the casket even closed, but Roy kept it out of country duty. His wife was from Santa Monica. She didn't get it. The husband looked over at the passenger seat. Every few hundred miles he'd chance stroking an elbow or a kneecap, but she kept tucking her head and pretending to snooze. In like fashion, the couple endured a day-and-a-half-long trip, calling a truce only to exchange 3 or 4 words whenever nature called. After an overnighter at an unlisted motel, they finally rolled into town for the first time since Ma's funeral. "Let me ask you something," said Faren, turn-of-the-century Vickies passing by her reflection in the window. Vickies were realtor shorthand for Victorian-era homes. Whatever inspired someone to name this place Ambition? The moving trucks were a day late, but by Friday, Roy's childhood home was stacked wall to rafter with boxes. No rush in unpacking. They had all summer to begin their new lives. All of everlasting, actually. At sunset, the husband found his wife on the front porch, screwdrivering a creaky screen door. He rubbed a tall, iced glass of sweet tea across the beads of her perspiring brow, draping his arms around her waistline. She exhaled, finally allowing her beach sand blonde head onto his chest. "What are we going to do?" "That's the nice part about having no mortgage," he answered. "Doesn't really matter." "Gonna get hungry someday," she persisted. "Relax this summer," he encouraged. "Rediscover your passions. I'm going to renew my real estate license, unless this town needs a good software dev and just doesn't know it yet." She laughed for the first time in weeks. He nudged her face. "Just make sure you keep your chin up, okay?" Faren took the advice and puttered around the house their first week, only exploring the wider township in their second. Place had pockets of calendar charm throughout, including a year-round autumn glow as if perpetually stuck in one season. The woman found neighbors normal and friendly enough. Everyone had children but them, though, a fact which definitely hit home more here than it ever did back in SoCal. One lazy evening, the couple found themselves dining outdoors with the Fireflies when the doorbell chimed. Before they could even stand, a large lady in a full-length black dress trimmed with white pilgrim's lace had let herself inside, and before either could blink, she was already in their backyard, making her way towards them as if by teleportation. Sally Agnes was at the age when women dye a whole helmet of whites and grays, Chesapeake Flame or Auburn Fire. She'd also appointed herself chairperson of the Committee for Community Greetings and had the egg salad sandwiches with diced scallions to prove it. The three sat and chatted for 45 minutes about topics ranging from the mundane to the uninteresting. Faren unsubtly fake yawned, and Sally Agnes winked, removing herself just as quick as she'd arrived. The wife turned back and saw her husband covering leftovers with saran wrap before bugs started making larvae. "Honey?" she asked. "Who was that?" "Sally Agnes," he replied. "She's the town mother. Has been even back when I was a boy." "You teasing me on purpose or what? Town mother? I mean, what's that mean?" The husband finished covering the food, listening to the soft whistle of leaves landing atop a creek that looped between their property line. "It's kind of an old tradition that you don't let yourself get too down around these parts. It's a Puritan thing, I think. Sally Agnes offers advice as needed." She came over close at his side, more than intrigued. "Like you're not allowed to get depressed?" "Sure," he answered. "And? Tell me." "If the town agrees that it might be safer for someone to go off for a while, then, you know." Faren sat down, wanting to hear every inch of this yarn. "No, I don't know. What will they do if somebody gets asked to leave and they refuse? Beat 'em up?" "It's not the townies. Everyone's just folks out here," said Roy. "But there's a certain spot you need to avoid, and by you I mean everyone avoids Gerdy Road. It's an old abandoned horse trail. At least that's what I heard. Problem is, no one knows where it is. So it's a superstition. But it doesn't make a lick of sense. How can you avoid something if no one knows where it is?" "Listen, you're a very upbeat, optimistic person. Always have been. It's what attracted me to you in the first place. That and those spindly chicken wing arms." "You're changing the subject." "You're going to fit in great around here." The husband wouldn't elaborate any more, which drove the wife crazy as she lay in bed listening to night crickets crooning, eyes wide and white. Next morning, Faren was back in the backyard. Environment looked quite different in daylight hours. She was kicking her heels up, enjoying a hammock and tree swing Roy had erected their very first afternoon in Ambition. The wife had wrangled a few more crumbs from her husband before he had to go, and was now eagerly relaying the report to Helen on the other end of her smartphone. "That's what's funny. Nobody knows where it is, only that it's somewhere around town. Maybe it's collective amnesia, where no one can recall where they put it. Okay, and get this. Roy told me you can't ever find it. But if you're sad, it finds you. Wild, huh? Apparently 1 or 2 people a year go missing. Men, women, girls, boys, elderly, toddlers, name it." "What? Of course not. Who would believe such a thing? What a grift, am I right? And let me tell you about this woman that dropped by last night." "Wait, hang on. Call you back in a few." "Boo-hoo, you're never happy, Hel." Faren put down her phone with bated breath. Leaves from their bushes were rustling awkwardly at all angles down the lane. Wasn't the wind. Sure wasn't a skunk either. She stood up and moved with hesitant, halting footfall. The young woman stopped short just as a large black shape came darting into the open. "Aren't these delectable? Fruit of God-made candies, I always say," remarked Sally Agnes. "Hope you don't mind. Was hunting for some myrtle berries." Those are boysenberry bushes, replied Faren. Am I an intrusion? Not at all. Actually wanted to ask you about something Roy was telling me last night. He was saying as town mother, sometimes you have to persuade someone to leave ambition because of an old road that pops up in one place and then another. Sally Agnes inhaled, pensively rubbing a thrift store medallion hanging by a chain while staring off into some inscrutable middle distance. Thank you for asking. That was artfully said. Let's say, for argument's sake, a man were to abandon his family. That kind of thing makes for bruised souls no matter where in the world you live. But here, those feelings can get you killed. Don't take any of this personally, dearie. Know Roy's family, good boy, good kin, knew his father Andy forever and a day. Faren clickety-clacked freshly painted and polished fingernails together. Forgive me, I'm an outsider here. Sally Agnes grinned. Curiosity is perfectly justified. Go ahead and ask whatever you like. Is Gerdy Road like a code word around here? Know what I mean? Like a metaphor for suicide or what? No, child. That road will surely find you at your worst, and when it does, you won't ever be seen or heard from again. See, I'd imagine if so many people had gone missing, then the authorities would be involved by now. We've had our fair share of troopers come through. Afterwards, folks will mind their P's and Q's for a while, and we'll enjoy stretches without any troubles. But it's only stretches, after all. Me, I figure the thing gets tired of being ignored and starts dragging victims down there, willing or no. Faren plucked a ripe boysenberry off the vine, popping it between her lips. And how would a road do this, pray tell? Forgetfulness, mental fog. Folk go out not knowing where they're headed, only to find out too late they took a wrong turn down a wrong road. Always know your way around this town and where you're going every time you step foot out your front door. If you do, Gertie Road will never have cause to find you. Sally Agnes turned and began walking back down the lane, back towards town. What's down that road? Faren called after her. What's at the end? The big lady kept moving, never stopping. It was as if these last queries fell on deaf ears. Few times Faren moseyed into the woods. Nothing ever happened. Nothing ever came. She reckoned it was because she was only pretending, yet with a firm goal in mind and heart. There was so much more to being a lost soul than tarrying here and there whilst whistling a happy little tune. Absent-minded flightiness wasn't going to cut it, or else Sally Agnes would have been worm food long ago. An antiques shop had piqued Faren's curiosity first week they'd arrived. Ostensibly, it was Ambition's sewing and hem store, but it had been converted into one of those junky depot mercantiles you always find in every small town. Often run by a vet of foreign wars, this one was manned by a 15-year-old clerk snapping bubble gum, daughter of the owner. Help you? She asked. Got a typewriter? You a writer? Asked the girl, squinting already squinty features. I was, used to be, thinking about picking up the habit again, kind of like exercise. The clerk sized her up head to toe. You from a big city? Don't you got a laptop? Betcha that's your father pictured in the marquee out front. Betcha he'd be thrilled if you made a sale this morning. The teenager found her way over to a glass menagerie covered in cobweb doilies in desperate need of attention. She unlocked a dusty, laminated case and out sprang a steel-framed typewriter like a jack-in-a-box. Think Japan manufactured these in the 70s or 80s. Don't know what you're going to do when the ribbon runs dry. Perfect. Just the thing to jumpstart my creative juices. The clerk went over to an antique cash register and tapped the customer's credit card against a smartphone banking app. Happy writing, she said with a cynical smile. $75. Hardly a bargain. You know, you strike me as a very bright young gal. Maybe you can help me with something. You're that kind of writer. Investigative journalist? Took you more for the tawdry murder mystery type. You'll want to speak with Marshall. He's seen some things. Allowing for lunch hour, Faren trudged into the police station by 1:30, lugging her heavy box typewriter. Didn't take long before she'd struck up a conversation with a second teen behind a desk, also the child of the proprietor. This was Marshall Marshall's daughter, Dabby. Her personality was much more bubbly than the shop owner's kid. That sullen creature better pray Gerdy Road ain't true, Faren mused to herself. Call me Dab for short. Think Debbie only swap out the E for an A. My dad'll be done with his rounds in an hour or so. Should be anyways. Most likely stop in for a drink or three down at Milt's place. Better play it safe and call it 4 o'clock. What'd you need? Maybe I can help. Black Bears find your T-top Camaro already? It's a convertible. No, nothing like that. Was talking with Sally Agnes the other day. Dabby giggled. Sally Agnes missed her calling as a nun. Everyone's pretty agreed on that point. Well, it was she that got me thinking about your disappearing road. By reading faces and matching body language, it was clear Gertie Road was just below the surface in every soul she'd met. It was a topic everyone knew, and only a few broached insincerely, if they broached it at all. The marshal's daughter repositioned herself, only then revealing that she was handicapped, requiring bolted and belted silver leg braces. Best pull up that swivel chair and make yourself comfortable. Got a story to tell you. Everyone in ambition has at least one. Mine is about Alice Cotton. Lived in that farmhouse off Elm Avenue, not far from you. Nice old lady. Used to walk her chow when I was in middle school. One morning I'm in algebra. My best friend Hetty, think Betty with an H, tells me the night before her brother saw the widow Cotton shambling around like a zombie at midnight. And here's the kicker. Buck naked and white as a bedsheet. No nightie, no negligee, nothing. Now Hetty thought the old gal had gone silly, and knowing my family was close with her, asked me to check. Do you know that chow chow had managed to strangle itself on a box fan's electrical cord? Even Sally Agnes couldn't sort out Alice Cotton after that. Hadn't lost her marbles, though. In my opinion, she was trying to find Gertie Road. So I snuck out one school night. Sure enough, about 3 a.m. she showed. Nude again? Faren asked. Yes, ma'am. Undressed herself in the middle of the street. Left a pink bathrobe in the crosswalk by pom-pom slippers. Next thing I knew, her bum was skedaddling up a road I'd never beheld before. Blood-red light pouring out like a highway to hell. Believed they were taillights at first, like they do at tractor pulls. But no way. So much red light. And there was a sign posted, rusty metal street sign that read Gerdy Road. Then came the screams. Screams. Alice's screams. Ran back home fast as I was able. Took me a month before I'd leave the house again, and of course by then it was nothing but an open field of foxtails swaying in the wind. Farmhouse still stands, unoccupied to this day. And the old lady, Alice, did she ever turn up again? Faren continued. Dabby slowly cocked her head side to side, never once blinking her freckly, plain Jane eyelids. That night, Gertie Road reduced Faren's dreams to nightmares. It opened upon a fabulous gala on a stage before adoring throngs. She was in a cocktail gown with outstretched arms to accept a Pulitzer for letters. Just as she took a hold of the award, her hands shriveled, pale, and warty with liver spots. She was now Alice Cotton, standing exposed and shivering amidst dense drapes of dread and veils of uncovered darkness. She tried in vain to hide herself inside an empty wooded forest, bleeding shafts of red light in all manner of directions. Bellowing growls and tormenting howls chased her through bowed boughs and bent branches. Snaky teeth snarled and slobbered, cutting bare legs and slashing exposed arms like so much wet tissue paper in a sawmill. Roy opened a small realty office downtown. Nothing fancy, didn't even have a name yet. Faren packed him a picnic basket lunch, intending to drop by and tour the place. Only she got sidetracked into the library, charmed by granite colonnades and thatched steeples. An old librarian offered to help fill out the paperwork for a new account so she could check out books, but the patron declined. Rumor is Ambition has a certain street that may or may not appear on any maps. I'm interested to research any history of its name. Gerdy. It's on all the maps, all right, sweetie, said the bespectacled lady. Just wait here a sec. Faren smiled 4 years of orthodontic perfection. The librarian slipped down a narrow staircase nearby a stovepipe oven attached to an octopus arms furnace in the basement. One of those old numbers with a coal chute that had been converted into a useless street-level window pane a generation ago. Nowadays, it was little more than target practice for neighborhood youths on scooters. After 15 minutes or so, she wondered if the poor woman hadn't slipped. Should she go downstairs and check? The librarian returned with an armload of long architect's blueprints. There's Gerdy Road right there, she said, pressing an unadorned fingernail onto yellowing scrolls. Faren studied the dusty documents intently for a beat. Gertie Road was the main road. Main Street, right outside your window. Correct, darling, agreed the old lady. It was renamed before you were born, before I was born. So who was this Gertie? Faren wanted to know. Some mayor caught up in a murder plot or love triangle? I've done more research on this affair than most, said the librarian. Best I can tell, there wasn't any scandal to speak of. One Ike Hiller put the idea of renaming the street to a vote, and it passed unanimously. End of story. Street must have taken it personally. Gertie has to be someone's name, though, right? Could have been the nickname for the mistress of our beloved township's founding father. Her name was Gertrude Younghouse. She got renamed, too. Insane. Committed to Fudge Paste Asylum Sanatorium in Tremaine. Faren collected her picnic basket and curtsied. Roy had picked up a Jeep down at the used lot and parked it parallel to a bus stop. Ticket was pink for first offenses, $235, sans towing. Smooth move, X-Lax, his wife thought, reading the citation. That's when she saw a hulk of a uniform striding into the police station. Marshal. Country boy indeed. A longshoreman crossed with a lumberjack. Single most handsome male specimen she'd ever lain eyes upon. Put mid-90s Fabio book jackets to shame. She jaywalked across the street and within a minute had ingratiated herself inside the marshal's office. Met your daughter the other day. I'm so glad to finally be meeting you. Oh, I thank you kindly, ma'am. Yeah, Dab told me. Dom Marshall, law in these parts. Beautiful name. Is it Dominic? Yes, ma'am. Named for my grandfather. So Dabby tells me you've been asking around about our town legends. Not surprising. Busloads of tourists and college kids come here for just that sport. But you and your husband being new taxpayers, I'll upgrade that stale spiel I regularly rattle off. Is it true? Faren inquired. The big cop crossed the pinstriped trousers of his 6-foot 4-inch frame, massaging a wide jawline and cleft chin, always threatening a beard and mustache. Got a broom closet down that hallway my deputies have entirely devoted to Gerdy Road, or Gerdy Road adjacent cases. And that's important if you're going to publish a serious account, not just trash. Not saying there aren't missing persons. There are, to be sure. But we also get inexplicable injuries from hikers who don't go missing. Call those near misses. It's a sticky business, ma'am. So what kind of intelligence are we dealing with here? Asked the woman. My experience, it's a wolf picking off frail game. Thin in the herd, a hunter might say. Lures with whatever kind of bait works, said the marshal. Spiritual, preternatural. Think of it as an illusion made by something very, very malevolent, something with bad intentions. Marshal, have you had any lunch? May I offer you a sandwich and an apple from my basket? That night, Roy slept down in the den with the throw quilt his mother had knitted the year before she died. His eyes never closed once. The sound of Faren's typewriter hammering upstairs, keystrokes surging in fitful, spastic tides. The wife was so self-possessed it never occurred to her that her husband hadn't stepped foot inside their bedroom. A Porsche pulled alongside the tireless metallic husk of what in a former life had been a 1960 Corvair. By tireless, we're not talking diligence, but 4 axles on cinder blocks. Sports car was a luxury rental from a Malibu dealership, and its driver propped the door so a cheese-puff Pomeranian could sniff out a plot of Arkansas to claim. On a whim, Helen had driven all the way from Cali in order to surprise her BFF. The woman looked up at Ambition's petrol station number 1, snapping a selfie next to its fiberglass dinosaur in a mechanic's uniform holding a wrench. She was going to text Faren this adorable pic as soon as she pulled into her driveway. Helen meandered inside the station, hoping to forage some honey-roasted peanuts, or maybe even a pack of yogurt-coated raisins. It didn't make sense dieting on a holiday. Owner's teen daughter was on duty, sort of, up to her bony elbows in knuckles and grease. Streak of it even made railroad tracks across her ginger coils, down the bridge of her nose, and onto an earlobe. No doubt she was pretty underneath all this, but she'd just as soon kill you first as let you know. "Young man," asked Helen, "how much farther till—" "Name's Maggie Mildred, ma'am," corrected the girl, twisting a ball cap backwards. "How much farther till Ambition?" "This is Ambition. You're stepping on it. But if you mean the downtown, keep heading 4 miles that away." The woman departed. Grumpy, the only available snacks were trapped inside a broken gumball machine. She collected her pooch and tore off in gravelly plumes of dust. Radio was blaring her fave internet playlist. How someone of her age got addicted to K-pop was anyone's guess. She was ready to belt out a falsetto chorus when the signal dropped in the treetops. Helen smacked her smartphone to muster a few bars, helicoptering it upside down like an aerial antenna over her bouffant. Nothing doing. She tossed the device onto the back seat, frustrated. Kid did say only 4 more miles, right? 10 miles later, and the woman saw a new storefront. Only it wasn't new. It was Ambition's petrol station number 1. This was absolutely nuts. How? Dashboard read east the entire time. Carrera 911 slowed to a crawl in the middle of a turn lane. Passenger's window rolled, nose and brow, rooting left and right like a hog after a truffle. The vehicle parked and they got out again. Every detail of this place was identical. Same gas pumps, same goofy dinosaur, same biohazardous gumball machine. Only where was that tomboy hiding? "Don't find you very amusing." She froze. Someone was over there, with their back turned. Wasn't that shop brat? This was a full-figured woman. It was herself. She was staring at her own rump. Same outfit and everything. Even a Pomeranian. Yet somehow in separate dimensions of space and time. A road conjured itself out of thin air, and Helen sensed she needed to warn herself not to go anywhere near it. But it was too late. First limb to go was an arm. Woman tried to escape but tripped, having never run with an asymmetrical upper body before. Next, a leg, and then all remaining limbs were lost. As sickening as it sounds, it had all happened so fast that she was still breathing, still fighting for life with only a head and torso, mouth opening and shutting like a trout on the dock. Helen touched herself, needing proof that she was real and intact, and that this was all the result of drowsiness. The rented sports car rocketed away, flying at 112 mph. If she didn't see anything promising after another block or two, she'd stop and call Faren. But how? It was here that she realized she'd left her dog. U-turn would have qualified at Talladega Superspeedway. Mr. Calling is a stock car racer. "Don't worry, my baby. Mommy's coming back," she said. Where was that gas station? Thing had a nasty habit of popping up everywhere until you needed it. She wasn't even on the highway anymore. That street sign she'd just blurred by read, Gerdy Road. It was a broad swath of concrete asphalt in need of a good repaving. Maybe she'd missed the turnoff earlier. Maybe she was close to town. Maybe. Hang on. Gerdy Road. Wasn't that the name her friend had mentioned over the phone the other day? Bimbo was ghosting her, or getting a perm. Faren had left at least a half-dozen voicemails for Helen, probably busy with one of her weekend cosmetics expos. She texted her in shout caps. "Big news! Call me! Pronto!" Today, Marshall had granted a ride-along, not with him, but with one of his strapping young deputies, Tommy Gravitas. He was known as Tommy G while at Ambition High. Young man was amiable, outgoing, and an immature cornball. "So you got a story for me?" she asked, winking inside the Crown Victoria's rear-view mirror. "Ma'am?" he responded from behind aviator sunglasses. "Marshall knows I'm writing a book on Gerdy Road. He could have put me with any of the deputies, but he chose you, Tommy Gravitas. Come on, you grew up here, didn't you?" The officer politely signaled around an oxidized 1950 Buick Roadmaster chugging down a narrow two-lane highway. "I get it," he said at last. "You're one of them married cougars, always on the prowl." Deputy could see he'd insulted her, embarrassed her. "Sorry, ma'am. That was rude. Let me make it up to you, because as it happens, my best friend was prom queen. Friends far back as diapers we were. Amber was her name, and she did in fact disappear one night down Gerdy Road." Woman tapped record on her smartphone's video app. "Don't mind, do you?" He wagged his head. "So as I was saying, our senior year, Amber got voted prom queen. Any normal girl would have been ecstatic. Only Amber wasn't normal. Wore cargo fatigues and camouflage boots most days. However, a few times a month you'd catch her in a dress and heels, which I will confess was a spiritual experience for most fellas in class. Hope that doesn't offend. But why this dual persona, you may ask? I'm the only guy at school she ever told. Amber was some kind of animal science had missed. Fur, fangs, and the whole shebang. Like a reverse werewolf, she got more human with the moon cycle. It was a full moon the night of prom. Proposed on the spot, brought out my granny's wedding ring and all. She said she'd marry me in a heartbeat. A month later, I saw her charging down Gerdy Road on all fours, haunches and hind legs of matted fur blowing wild as the wind. Faren powered down her smartphone. "Guess she couldn't stomach the idea of being with you the rest of her life. Wish you'd stop mocking me. You can take me home now." Deputy didn't take her home. He drove 20 more miles before pulling onto an unmarked service road. Woman got nervous when the policeman exited. Felt even more insecure when he didn't come back. Gathering her courage, she went off searching. "Deputy?" she called out faintly. "Don't you leave me, Deputy Gravitas." Caught up with them 1,000 yards off, hunched and doubled over, elbows on his knees. He was poking at a swarm of flies with a stick. "What is it?" she asked in an approaching whisper. It was an unsmoked package of slim cigars alongside half-eaten Twinkies. "Hitchhikers called in this morning. What we got here is a primary feeding source, called the staple diet. If bears got fish and honey, Gerdy Road's got hippies and dippies. Couldn't just be litter, huh?" Deputy turned back over his shoulder, glaring sarcastically under a ranger's Stetson. Now why would anyone bother police over garbage? He flicked his nose across the way at what looked like a pair of child's hockey pads. Faren cupped hands at her face, studying some pinkish, whitish collagen-like material. "What are those?" she asked. "Kneecaps. Blown off like claymore mines, no?" She later recollected screeching all the way back to the squad car, locking herself in tight. The officer caught up following a short spell in order to retrieve a styrofoam cooler utilized for collecting night crawlers and evidence. Got lucky. Most often we're left with nothing to work with. Small chance making an ID on this dude. Small but better than none. Rather than torture the passenger cradling herself into a fetal posture, they returned to town with the ice chest on the front seat next to him. Faren was pleasantly surprised when she opened the front door that night and discovered Merlot and Peking duck by candlelight. Not her favorite, but Roy was an excellent gourmet. It was evident he wanted to talk over supper, and she was fairly positive what about. Couldn't help hearing you picked up writing again. Rediscover my passions, you told me. What's your subject? Your Gerdy Road. Need any help? The wife didn't answer. No inkling the husband was on the third day of a passably macho beard. He was a Paul Marat-looking bloke on his best days. Hoped this would gruff up his presentation. Maybe mix in some checkered flannel with suspenders. She went to bed while he loaded the dishwasher. Ceiling fans could be meditative, counting revolving, rotating blades, cool breeze on your face. It clicked. Hitchhikers. Hitchhikers were the key to all this. Faren staked out a dive on the outskirts of the county line. Cap'n Lou's. Her plan was to dangle her legs at hobos. Didn't get far. One had put his faith in the Bible of 12 steps to conquer alcoholism as well as women. He'd sense enough not to get inside this siren sports car. A second did agree to go for a ride, yet likewise perceived danger and requested to be let out at the next available convenience store or trucker's pit stop. The woman was fast becoming discouraged until she got catcalled by two hooligans. They were reckless but non-committal regarding Faren's proposals. At least they agreed to hear her out if she sprang for dinner, which she did. She got them the two best items on the menu, a ribeye and a porterhouse, chicken fried steak and waffles being a close third. So what do we got to do again? Asked Carlos, chewing and swallowing a mouthful of meat. Just need help searching the woods for my dog. Honest, she got off her collar and no one will help me. The two looked at each other doubtfully. At this hour? What's your dog's name? Asked Diamond. Chow. Chow Chow? Faren murmured under her breath. That's a breed, not a name, Carlos corrected. Nothing doing. They didn't bite. So she holed up in that parking lot until last call. Sitting in her Camaro with the engine on and the headlights off, keeping close to the heater vents for warmth. Figured Carlos and Diamond might see things her way once they had naught but the chill night to keep them company. Only that's not how it went down. Much to her consternation, Cap'n Lou locked up the joint and left with the two in his van. Faren had come too far to abandon ship. She followed them to a chop-a-block inn. This time she was proactive, driving to the market and purchasing a steak knife, then returning to slash Cap'n Lou's white walls. At 4 a.m., Carlos and Diamond re-emerged and jumped into the van, only to accept their predicament soon thereafter. Now the two were much more amenable to a lift, only this all went to pot in a hurry. They tossed her in the back and commenced liberal usage from a duffel of what can only be described as illegal-flavored, mushroom-shaped candy. Speedometer read nothing under 3 digits for 10 solid miles, and it was now that the woman began to consider her own end, maybe even a touch of remorse for the first time in her life. Had this gone on for another half-mile, a genuine conversion may have transpired in those back seats. Fortunately, she was spared any further introspection by the grinding of gears and the smoking of drum brakes. 2 black ribbons of rubber squealed over a yellow painted median, sending the woman splattering into the back of the driver's seat and then spilling onto the floor mats. She looked up after a few dazed seconds, a necklace of saliva tied to her mouth by a clump of her own hair. Carlos and Diamond left both Camaro doors wide open, standing outdoors as if in rapture. This was Faren's first experience with the great god, Gerdy Road. a belt of glorious reflector lights laying perpendicular over top this cold wash of freeway, as if paved long, long ago. The boys began jumping up and down as if they'd both just unwrapped BMXs at Christmas time. A spasm of energy overtook her, and she ran after them, unsure whether to encourage or warn. As soon as Faren got close, she tripped at their sneakers, bottoms of their soles, pounding a beeline straight for their fate. What sounded like a living foghorn curdled with outrage, and in the blink of an eye, it was the end of the whole wide world. Until it wasn't. Just like that, Gerdy Road was gone, forest swaying unmolested in the night. She was alone. At the break of dawn, Deputy Tommy Gravitas called his boss out to a peculiar crime scene. Diabetic Captain Lou had been tied to the back of a desk chair at the Slow-Water Inn, half dead from dehydration. His deputy had a bad sense of humor about this whole ordeal, and so Marshal was the one filing the report back at the office, when who should strut inside but the batting eyelashes of Roy's wife. Oh, and what a tale she had to tell, too. So you took it upon yourself to follow these two, believing they were about to commission a crime? Yep. Think you owe someone 4 new radials, quipped the cop with no small amusement. They disappeared down Gerdy Road, the woman exclaimed with handsy animations. Heard you the first time. Bull. Desk phone rang violently. After a brief conversation, to which she was not privy owing to a cupped hand over the receiver, the marshal hung up and gazed out a window into the prevailing woods. We'll finish up later. Big caseload, you know. Day came and went. Before Faren knew it, evening was here again, huge runny egg of a moon peeking out behind the pines. She was exhausted. Hadn't been home. She slid her key fob into place, pausing to admire the alternating neon wattage over Milt's bar and pub. Didn't enjoy these dives nearly as much as Helen, but that was before she saw Marshal entering. Maybe now we can finish our chat. Never a bad time for a good nightcap, she advised herself. Milt's was the right combination of tobacco and Game of the Week on a corner TV. Dom Marshall made a customary lap, shaking hands and swearing to look into this or that for him or her. If he didn't, someone would feel neglected, and he and his beer would never get properly acquainted. Bass fishing, next week, he guaranteed Marty Broxson and his son, Junior. I know it. They're parking right in front of your fire hydrant. I'm on it, he reassured Nicky Del Vecchio of Del Vecchio's Sporting Emporium. After a brief round of darts with Barry Kite, he made it to the booth everyone left vacant, especially for him. Milt delivered a tall, cold pint lager as soon as he was seated. This was going to go down real easy. Been a long enough day, that was for sure. Some fancy-dance out-of-state rental agency reported an airbag deployment in the area. Didn't find nothing. Quite a stallion, your Deputy Gravitas, said Faren, sitting down opposite. Next time I'd prefer to go out with you on your rounds. Milt switched off the TV. All conversation dropped through the floor. Entire establishment was pin-drop silent, not so much as a whisper. The woman looked around, bewildered, chartreuse lipstick agape. Every set of eyeballs was trained on her. They looked ready to accuse her of murder. No, it was as if she'd already been convicted, and now they were preparing to stretch her neck over an elmwood in the center of town. Appreciate that, ma'am, but I'm sure you'll understand why I have to decline. I'm married, said the marshal. As are you. The big cop stood up and exited, his drink totally untouched. Next morning, Faren was positively fit to be tied. Wasn't about those 2 boys. She'd already dismissed their names from her mind. No, it was about being humiliated at Milt's the prior night. The wife hid her true feelings from her husband until after he left the house for work. As soon as the taillights of Roy's Jeep swerved around the bend, she let loose like a cannon shot, venting her frustration by smacking herself, then some silken bedpillows, then herself some more. Memories of all too familiar rejections were bubbling inside a kettle called childhood. "Calm down, baby. Calm down, baby," she counseled herself in a sultry, smooth, self-loving tone. It was as if someone entirely different had just stepped into the room. That boy back in school, what was his name? Kenny something. No, Kenny was his last name. Clark Kenny. That's it. He'd paid dearly for crossing her in the 8th grade. She'd cursed him, and his twin brother drowned himself 3 months later. It was so severe that grief drove the parents to leave the state after the inquest. But how had she done it? Been so long. She spent the better part of that afternoon cracking the spines on tomes she'd owned since her pre-teens. Grandmother had passed it down to her mother, and she to her daughter. It all came rushing back to her. In a week, the Marshalls were going to celebrate Isaiah's 5th birthday, Dabby's kid brother. McDreweries weren't invited. Only way Faren knew about it was because she'd been peeping Tomming the family, hot to get the dish on Dom Marshall's better half. Her name was Laurel Marshall. Petite as her man was husky, hazel eyes with bounding locks to match. Something right out of Catholic Housewives magazine, right down to a veil-covered head at Mass. Who did this pure as the driven snow marm think she was, anyways? Faren decided to get the retribution rolling when Dabby went to bed one night, smudging her pickup in the driveway with dead birds. Hours later, the vehicle got totaled in the school parking lot, unoccupied when a short bus sideswiped it. Next, the woman snuck up a tree and saged the house with droppings and urine. A day later, Isaiah was in kindergarten, vomiting with 105-degree fever. Witch even broke in one morning when the Marshall house was empty and fed their dog dolls she'd made of the animal's masters. A week later, Goldie mauled the hand that fed her while he was relaxing in his spa, and the pet had to be put down. This had all been fun and games. Faren was ready to unleash hell. She walked into Milt's around 7 o'clock and found Dabby drinking ginger ale at her father's booth, watching soaps on her smartphone. "Aren't you a bit young to be in here, young lady?" The teen gushed shyly, braces on her teeth bright as those on her legs. "Busted, I guess, huh? Only soda water. Don't worry yourself. I'll never tell. Sure I can't tempt you with something stronger?" Girl couldn't help notice how different this woman was behaving tonight. Darker eyeshadow for sure. "I'll wait till I'm legal, thanks." "Bet you will. Still, tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow and all that jazz. We never can be sure how many we're going to get. Speaking of which, did I tell you about my ride-along with Deputy Gravitas?" Dabby's eyes sparkled. She was hooked. "He's crazy about you. Honest. He's just worried about what your dad will say." The girl gripped the woman by the hands. She really wanted to believe. Her papa was the only one who'd asked her to the Sadie Hawkins dance. "You're lying. You're lying?" "If you say so, I'm just playing the part of Cupid's errand here." Faren leaned in under Dabby's earlobe. Milt had the night off, but his younger bartender began observing from behind the bar. "He asked me to come in here and bring you out." "If you're lying to me, so help me." "I'm not. Let's go." Dabby got to her feet, work boots unlaced. Faren dragged her fanny back down onto the bench. "Shouldn't you freshen up first? Put this on. It's your color." Girl screwed up her eyebrows at an orangish shade of lipstick from a twistable cap. "Don't wear makeup. Neither does my mom." She looked up, pleading. The woman gleamed, pulling the youth's face close. "Come here, sugar. Make believe you're kissing, deputy. Dabby closed her eyelids while Faren lightly, gently dabbed her lips. A princess. What is that brand? My special potion. Never heard of it. Tommy really said he likes me. Said he loves you. If only, if only, if only. If only Tommy Gravitas and another deputy hadn't been at that drive-in with their girlfriends on a double date. If only he hadn't laughed so hard, more out of shock than cruelty, when Dabby jammed herself inside their window like some overexcited B-movie monster with clown makeup on. If only someone had seen that woman whisking a distraught pubescent up a high mountain pass. There she cut her loose, directionless as she was drugged. Dab wandered, aimless and alone, disoriented and disturbed, with nettles protruding from her coils of red bounding locks. Whatever Faren had spiked in that lipstick was causing the teenager's heart to race and slow, start and stop. Only she wouldn't last long enough to die via overdose that night. Not that night. For just as her throat was closing up, cutting off a last drip of oxygen to her lungs, Dabby tripped into a heap of twisted metal wreckage. Brambles and overgrowth stabbed through all the wheel wells and broken windows of a sports car left digesting in the woods. The driver's side door was partially agape, and in the back seat was a smartphone next to the decaying remains of a small dog. In that moment of final desperation, a road unfurled over the girl's head, smashing through trees like a lolling tongue of blood-red asphalt. An hour afterwards, Faren was seen pacing Main Street, licking the fork from a heavenly brownie pie a la mode, smiling at all the carefree twosomes passing arm in arm. It was awful. Not the gore, wasn't much of that. It was because this wasn't a nameless, faceless itinerant. Tommy Gravitas knew her and blamed himself. How could he not? This was his fault. Deputy didn't ring his boss until after coroners had come and boxed up what was left. Flecks of Dabby's blood, along with trace amounts of bone and tissue. Body must have gone through a meat grinder. Last thing recovered was an Ambition High School ID card. When he finally did raise the courage to call Marshall, it was the last of Deputy Tommy Gravitas' career. He quit next morning, never to be seen or heard from again. Rumors he'd caught on with a crabbing boat in Alaska. No one ever could confirm. Another indirect kill for Gerdy Road. Fatalities kept mounting, but this one was personal. Ambition had no official cemetery, not for decades now. Funeral was held one county over in Larks. Following the burial, of which there was precious little to bury, Sally Agnes encouraged the Marshalls to go ahead with Isaiah's birthday. Just make everyone sad if and you cancel, she said. Come the day, they pared down attendees to just classmates, parents, and guardians. Clouds were appropriately overcast and somber, yet the tyke was an irrepressible joy. Natural clown and entertainer. Impossible not to make everyone laugh and cry with his cowboy hat and horsey breeches. Faren convinced Roy it was okay to crash, telling him the whole town had been invited and that he could pass out flyers for anyone interested in listing. Made the marshal uncomfortable seeing her at his home. He glanced over at Laurel. His wife was busy with the other moms. Didn't feel right saying anything, leastways not today. Besides, only thing that could be said was that this woman had developed a reputation for being overtly flirty. That was about it. Faren personally hand-delivered a gift with a bow to the child, including a big happy birthday peck on his cheek. She then stepped backwards with unflinching concentration. At the cake cutting, she was still standing there, now gesturing with her fingertips. Marshals noticed their son stop spinning suddenly, tiny blonde arms at his sides. Maybe he was plumb tuckered and getting close to a nap. But Isaiah wasn't tired. He was trying to hear what that voice in his head was saying. Open it. Go on. Be a big boy and open it. He obeyed. Finding a spot on the cool fescue lawn, the child tore open the present with a bow. His heart sank in one drawn beat, innocence draining from his sky-blue eyes. Isaiah was old enough to read, write his name, and go potty all on his own. No one needed to tell him that these silver leg braces had belonged to Sissy. He dropped the wrapping paper. There was nothing inside but a shredded, empty box. The marshals next caught sight of their son wandering off towards a neighboring fence line, lips quivering. Instinctively, every parent knew something wasn't right and called out his name. Isaiah! 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 Land came to life and started shrieking. Power lines belched forth sparks. Tree trunks spat and split, shaking and shrinking as if quicksand were pulling them under by their roots. Skies darkened, then burst red with scanning searchlights and strobing spotlights. Appearing from nowhere, Gerdy Road uncoiled, unfurling mile upon mile, cleaving the residents in two. Parents and children, aunts and uncles, grandparents and guardians blew from its path like so many gnats in a tornado. Last anyone could recall of Isaiah was his miniature silhouette evaporating inside a maw of pavement. In 1 week, Dom Marshall had twice traveled to Lark's to bury an empty casket. Their home was childless again, long before its welcome, and nothing like it was back when he and Laurel first married. She'd already fled ambition, staying with her folks in Alabama. He'd join her soon as the town found a new marshal. The big cop sipped stiff black coffee and read from the book of Job. A lot of people in his situation do, expecting God to explain why. He looked around a house that had been leveled by Gerdy Road, yet it was right as rain now, nary a loose floorboard. Still, his boy was gone. Okay, God, why? Why couldn't my son's death have been the trick, and that road been satisfied with this blasted place instead? He wasn't depressed. What's a 5-year-old got to be sad about? The marshal hung on this for a beat, inhaling his coffee's aroma like a medicinal herb. Job was still waiting for him. Chapter 1, verse 7. Where have you been? Asked the Lord. Roaming the earth and patrolling it, replied the Satan. The doorbell chimed. It was Rusty, Milt's young understudy in the bar trade. Hey, how you been? Been okay? He asked as soon as he saw the front door open. Dom Marshall shrugged. Brings you out this morning. I'll come straight to it then. Night Dabby went missing. Night she died. I saw her at Milt's, and that alley cat, Mrs. McDrewery, was sitting there with her. She was? She was, and I don't like her. Don't like her even a little. Was messing with Dab, I could tell. Her mama never taught her no Maybelline or Revlon or whatever in the hoot. No, she sure hadn't. Wasn't that the truth? Marshall closed his Bible a while after Rusty left. Needed lots of space to think things over. He continued packing his mantle of fly fishing trophies, then with effort the elk he'd bagged last spring in Mississippi with the dentist Bill Summersby. Rack was so wide he deliberated knocking down a wall when mounting it. Next came 22.5 minutes cleaning and oiling the 12-gauge scattergun before, at long last, loading up his work truck and heading out. At 10:15, Roy heard a knock at his front door. Marshall, he said, holding stubbornly in the doorframe before ushering his visitor indoors with a reluctant smile. The two sat on recliners by a smoky, glass-topped coffee table overlooking the deck. Got a couple from Primontia coming out to see your place this week. The big cop didn't care. I want to share something about myself most don't know. When I was little, there was a trauma in our family that affected me so severely. Sally Agnes convinced my folks to send me away from ambition. For my safety, she said. So I was raised by relations in Texarkana for years. Was the same age as Isaiah when I left. In fact, his kinder teacher, Miss Jenny, was also mine. Ain't that something? Really sorry for you and Laurel's recent losses. Place ain't gonna be the same with a new marshal. Marshall looked around. Where's the wife this morning? He expected to hear lame excuses such as shopping, nails, or what have you. What he got instead was blubbering and sobbing ordinarily reserved for a cancer diagnosis. Hasn't been home in days, Roy wailed from the bottommost corner of his soul. Take it easy. Can't be acting that way around here. You know that. When'd you see her last? Where? Roy lifted a finger, pointing out at the wooded backyard. Day we got back from your boy's party, she bayed. She bayed like a broke dog and ran straight into yonder woods. And you didn't say nothing till now? Please, she ain't got a stitch of clothing on. All right, I ain't waiting. Call my deputies here, every last one of them. Coming with you? Not in your condition, you're not. Thing'll kill you. Stay put. Don't drive nowhere. In fact, don't trust your eyes at all. Dom Marshall sprinted to the cab of his work truck, threw open the third door, and scarfed up the 12-gauge with a bandolier of shells. He then marched straight back through the living room, stepping over a cowering Roy before vanishing into the thickets and hedges outdoors. He paced himself like drill sergeant had taught them at boot camp, if not Coach Frazier in gym class. Knelt frequently at a brook or stream for rehydration, which is the route he'd have taken if he was her. On the other hand, she may be stark raving mad if half of what Roy just described turned out true. This all added up to one outcome. Gerdy Road would find her, if it hadn't already. The big cop rehearsed aloud. You are not lost. Hear me? Ambition is over that ridgeline. You are not lost. True north, south behind, that's east and that's west. You are not lost. John Adler's pond over there, quail farm over there. Been this way 1,000 times before. He'd had 2 personal encounters with Gerdy Road. First was when he was 5. Overheard Mama crying on the phone. Daddy had been shot in the chest on a routine traffic stop at Gadsden's Junction. Young Dom was so hysterical he ran the 9 miles in his socks and pajamas. His father survived and worked another 20 years. But that night it materialized directly in front of the pines. Directly in front of him. It tugged at his innards and bowels, vowing it was a shortcut. He'd survived, but the stress caused lingering side effects, such as hair and weight loss, prompting Sally Agnes to ask that he leave ambition. The other was after he'd returned years later and gotten engaged to Laurel. Case of cold feet caused her to back out, even after invitations had already been mailed. He suspected there was somebody else. Thought of his girl crushing on some other guy. Dom Marshall had been in love with her ever since Sister Mary Joseph's catechism. Turns out it was Jesus, and she was contemplating the convent. Following 2 weeks of prayer and discernment at a retreat house, she called and asked if he was still interested in her. Only if Porky Benton's interested in corn dogs, he answered. Nevertheless, during that 2-week purgatory, the lad had suffered doldrums, something fierce. So one night he lined up 580 aspirin on a fallen log 3 miles from home. This time Gertie Road came right up his backside, could feel nettles and needles breathing down his shoulder blades. Never turned around, never told Laurel what almost losing her had almost done to him. There came a braying, not close, but female, probably human. He'd found her. She was alive. A light mist was falling. Not much, but enough to make rivulets off the plastic of his rain Stetson. The beast looked up, sniffing damp air with feral nostrils. She felt it too. Like King Nebuchadnezzar, Faren had been delivered over to carnality. Eyes yellow, ears black, clots of leaves and clods of soil in every stringy tangle of hair. Her dirty, bare body was cut in spots both seen and not, and she didn't even know or care. Hands dropped down at her abdomen, fingernails still bearing smears of starry pink glitter. She was feasting on sawgrass. No, she'd killed a wren. His fast approach spooked her, fleeing on all fours. She'd made a burrow for herself in a hollow stump, but couldn't now seem to get back to it. Where had it gone? Where? Past the stream? Around the boulders? By the rickety letters read Gerdy Road across teeter-tottering old signage. Marshall saw Faren pacing with the mind of a stupid animal, goading him to pursue her. She'd found something, could hear her cries, only it was tough to tell what from this far. What was at the end of this road anyways? Never stepped foot on it before, never dared. What killed you exactly, and how long before she'd be a goner? He pumped the single-action weapon in one hand and took a rangy step. Hot wind whipped around his ears, sealing him from reality behind. Its red lights were a pair of eyeballs, its road a tongue. And there ahead, Roy's wife dancing on the porch of a small cottage. How old was it? Before the foundations of the world. Who was in it? He intended to find out. The big cop passed through the white picket fence of a flower garden, tulips he guessed, blasting the front door into wood particulates. Not dancing, burning. He'd come just in time to witness Faren falling into guts of woe, plasmatic tar that digested souls. Ambrose Stevenson, Carlos, Diamond, Helen, and every outsider it had found. Alice Cotton, Amber, and all the townsfolk it had fooled. And yes, children, many of them, most of them. Dabby and Isaiah were hugging one another, hand in hand. They'd be forced to languish and agonize here until the coming of the day of the Lord. The lolling torches of the days, when the vaults of the lawless would give up their dead, goat would be divided from lamb, and justice at long last met out on angel and man alike. Are you lost, mortal? I'm not lost. Then you have no portion here, mortal. You stole my children. Ate your children, mortal. Give me Dabby and Isaiah. Which one? Demon had been given this time to take what it could, yet also this power to free what it would. Made no never mind. Its doom was set regardless. It had received no salvation, whether it was merciful or cruel. It chose cruel because it was the element of cruel, the essence of cruel, the color of cruel. Still, this Father bestowed an opportunity most rare, the highest pain of smoldering regret. Choice. Dom Marshall had already made it, but the words were like stones in his mouth. He fell forward onto his knees. Please, please, take me in their stead. You are not lost. Dabby was every inch her daddy's girl, Isaiah his mommy's boy. Years back, Dab would cry whenever getting shampoo in her eyes at bath time. Dom Marshall would let her suds his eyes, and he'd pretend to weep. Isaiah had laughed first second he'd landed in Laurel Marshall's arms at the hospital. Nurses and doctors swore they'd never seen any newborn do that before or since. And this is how the decision got made. He would sacrifice for Laurel, and he would ask his baby girl to do the same for her little bro. He trusted that the Lord was good for his promises, and in the end wipe away every tear from his family. Laurel Marshall had given up eating or drinking anything while at her parents'. She was searching for her own Gertie Road in Alabama. When the husband came through the front doors with their baby boy, the wife passed out from joy, so weakened and deprived of nourishment was she. Days later, she was overheard to say, "That's why you're the marshal." Not anymore. She hugged and held Isaiah close as a teddy bear. "And Dab? Someday soon, baby. Someday very soon."